Europe as a whole, but certainly Ireland with its unique expressions of Christianity. It's really not so much Europe that converted to Christianity, in my view. Rather, it's Christianity that converted to Europe. Ireland got that quite a bit, maybe even more so than certain other areas. And it probably helps in a way that Ireland, except during the Cromwell era, under the Commonwealth and all that. But besides that, Ireland fairly, for the most part, had this uninterrupted stream where it was underneath the Catholic Church, which definitely had its not great side, put it lightly, but also in a way that preserves some of those traditions, because the oncoming or advent of Protestantism wanted to eschew so many of those extraneous things that it felt were, probably in a way rightly so, thought were pagan intrusions into an otherwise pure Protestant Christianity that they wanted to get at. And maybe if you're coming at it from a Christian point of view, they had a point. But in countries that remain Catholic, we have this amazing survival of so much pagan practice and folklore, and just the thinnest of veneers of Christianity over it. And so I feel we can approach a lot of those rites, and all we got to do is just peel back some of those layers, and we have a shockingly intact paganism right beneath the surface.
Yeah, you do include some of the texts that you've drawn from in your book seem to relate to Christian prayers, but then I think perhaps even words like prayer make some pagans, oh no, but actually we do it, don't we? We do spells of prayers, or talking to the moon is a prayer, or there are a lot of crossovers. Definitely.
And I think, in my own practice, I'm very comfortable now with sort of reclaiming that language for ourselves. And I can't speak for everyone, and I totally understand and can only empathize with the experience of people who maybe are coming from a more repressive or confining background of Christianity or other monotheistic traditions in particular, that associated language is just it's a little too raw still. Like, okay, I get it, but I'm not going to do it myself. It's a tangent, but it's a little bit like the kneeling thing too, which is actually a little similar, where it's kind of like there's so many memes out there, and I, again, totally respect this, but especially in the heathen community, I'd say there's a lot like, we do not kneel before our gods, which is fine. You don't have to. You do not have to. But we do have it on record in some accounts that the ancestral pagans would occasionally, it seems, kneel before the gods when they were doing acts of worship. We do have that in the survival of the letters from Ibn Fatlan in his travels with the Kievan Rus. Is it the Kievan Rus or just the Rus? I'll just say Rus, just in case it's not quite 100% accurate. But who were, for all intents and purposes, heathens. They most likely would have been worshiping some form of Odin and Thor, etc. And we have an account that once they made landing at one area, that the men got off the ship and approached a series of representations of their gods, which were represented as poles in the ground, and that they fell on their knees in worship and made offerings to the poles. And in some ways, it really does make sense, because the default stance of prayer in the Abrahamic faiths, especially Judaism, for example, is standing, is to stand and sometimes have a gesture of arms out, either standing or, in the case of Islam, full prostration. And usually just on once a year on Yom Kippur, maybe also on Rosh Hashanah. I'm not a rabbi, don't quote me. But Jews will also, during the Great Aleinu, they will also make a full prostration. Other than that, the default gesture is standing. Whereas it's actually in Europe that we find this tradition of bending the knee to show reverence or
respect.
Especially in the case of a king. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Respect to a king, to a royal, a noble, etc., etc. So, curiously, the whole kneeling thing might actually be a rather uniquely, or not uniquely, but a peculiarly European gesture of reverence. While purely standing is, ironically enough, the more traditional Abrahamic form of worship. But again, since nowadays most of us would associate kneeling with kind of a Catholic form of worship, etc., those coming out of that background, totally get it if you never want to kneel again in your life. That is fine. And plus, that gets into the whole snake bit of, how do we go about the reconstruction of these forms of worship in the first place?
There has to be something, I think, that each individual feels comfortable with, doesn't it? It's got to work through your own pathway.